love, betrayal, revenge. These three emotions can turn even the most innocent love story into a battlefield of hearts. What happens when the person you trust the most rips your world apart? And what if fate has a way of bringing you back stronger than ever? This is the story of Evelyn, a woman who lost everything in the blink of an eye, only to rise again in a way no one saw coming. But before she could reclaim her life, she had to endure the greatest betrayal imaginable. Her sister, her own flesh and blood, married the man she loved. And just when she thought the pain couldn't cut deeper, fate intervened. But when they saw who was standing beside her on her wedding day, it left them gasping. Evelyn always believed in love. She believed in the kind of love that makes your heart race, your world slow down, and every moment feel like it's wrapped in magic. And for a time she thought she had found that with Daniel. Daniel was charming, successful, and deeply devoted, or so she thought. They had been together for 3 years, surviving long distances, career struggles, and the ups and downs of life. Evelyn dreamed of the day Daniel would get down on one knee and ask her to be his forever. But she never saw the betrayal coming. It started subtly. Small changes in Daniel's behavior. Missed calls, late-night meetings, and a certain distance in his eyes when he looked at her. At first she dismissed it. She convinced herself it was work stress. But then there were the whispers. Her best friend Sophia warning her that something felt off. "Evie, just be careful," Sophia had said one evening as they sat on her couch sipping wine. "I've seen the way he looks at her." Evelyn had laughed. "Her? Who are you talking about?" But she didn't laugh when Sophia said the name. Celeste. Her sister. Evelyn felt sick just hearing it. Celeste had always been the wild one. The one who flirted, the one who played with fire just to see if she could handle the burn. But Evelyn refused to believe she would ever betray her. She brushed it off as paranoia. Daniel would never do that. Celeste would never do that. But doubt gnawed at her, sinking its claws into her heart. The next few weeks were unbearable. Evelyn found herself questioning everything. Every text, every smile, every time Daniel glanced at his phone. Until one night the truth came crashing down on her in the most brutal way possible. She had gone to Daniel's apartment, unannounced, carrying his favorite meal and a heart full of love, only to find the door slightly open. The sight that met her eyes shattered her world. Daniel. In the arms of her sister. Evelyn couldn't breathe. It felt like the air had been sucked out of her lungs as she stood frozen at the doorway, watching the man she loved hold another woman, her own sister, in the way he used to hold her. Her presence snapped them apart. Celeste gasped, scrambling to cover herself, while Daniel turned pale as a ghost. "Evelyn," he started, his voice cracking. But she didn't want to hear his excuses. Tears blurred her vision as she forced herself to walk away, each step feeling like a dagger to her soul. Celeste didn't chase after her. She didn't apologize. Instead she smirked as if she had won some twisted game. That was the moment Evelyn realized. Celeste had done this on purpose. And that realization burned deeper than the betrayal itself. Evelyn fell into a dark place. Nights blurred into mornings and the pain of their betrayal consumed her. The worst part, they didn't even try to hide it. Within weeks, Daniel and Celeste were officially a couple. And just 6 months later they were engaged. The wedding invitation arrived like a slap to the face. A beautiful white envelope with gold-trimmed edges, addressed to Miss Evelyn Carter. She nearly ripped it apart. "You have to go," Sophia insisted. "Why would I?" Evelyn snapped, tears threatening to fall. "To watch them rub their happiness in my face?" "No," Sophia said, eyes burning with something fierce. "You have to go so they can see that they didn't break you." But at that moment, Evelyn didn't feel strong. She felt shattered. Until fate stepped in. Until he walked into her life. The air inside the Grand Hotel ballroom buzzed with energy. The sharp clink of glasses, low murmurs of high-powered conversations, and the faint notes of classical music played by a string quartet filled the space. It was one of those elite corporate networking events where fortunes were made, alliances were forged, and the most powerful men and women in the business world gathered to flaunt their influence. And then he walked in. Liam Sinclair. Heads turned, conversations halted mid-sentence, and even the most self-assured executives straightened their ties as they caught sight of him. Liam was a force, effortlessly commanding attention without having to demand it. His tailored navy blue suit hugged his broad shoulders perfectly, exuding power and refinement. sharp cheekbones, piercing blue eyes that held an intensity few could match, and a confidence that seemed to roll off him in waves. He was a man accustomed to winning. A billionaire entrepreneur known for his ruthless business acumen and his uncanny ability to spot potential where others saw nothing. He rarely attended events like these, but tonight something had compelled him to be here. And then he saw her. Evelyn. She wasn't like the others, wasn't trying to chase him down or impress him with empty words. She was standing near the bar, lost in thought, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the rim of her glass. The deep emerald green dress she wore hugged her curves in all the right places, the soft lighting casting a delicate glow on her skin. Her dark hair cascaded in loose waves over her shoulders, and her eyes, there was something in them that held him captive. Pain, strength, a quiet fire that hadn't been extinguished despite whatever storm she had endured. Something inside Liam shifted. He was used to seeing women who flaunted their beauty, who draped themselves in jewels and expectation. But Evelyn, she wasn't trying to be noticed. And that's what made her impossible to ignore. Without hesitation, he made his way toward her, his footsteps deliberate, his mind already made up. He didn't know what it was about her, but something told him. This was a meeting he wasn't going to walk away from unchanged. Evelyn felt his presence before she even turned around. A slow warmth spread through her, a strange awareness prickling at the edges of her senses. When she finally glanced up, her breath hitched. His eyes locked onto hers, unwavering, intense. There was something in his gaze that sent a shiver down her spine, like he could see through the walls she had built, straight into the parts of her she kept hidden from the world. "Looks like I finally found something worth my time tonight," Liam said, his voice smooth, rich, filled with quiet certainty. Evelyn arched a brow, amusement flickering through her pain. "And what exactly is that?" Liam's lips curved into the faintest smirk. "You." For the first time in months, Evelyn felt something she thought she had lost. The thrill of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, she had finally found what she was looking for. The moment Liam Sinclair stepped into Evelyn's life, the air around her shifted. It was as if, for the first time in months, the universe was offering her a way out of the shadows of betrayal and heartbreak. But she wasn't naive, she had learned her lesson the hard way. Trust was no longer something she gave freely. Yet as she stood there looking up into Liam's impossibly blue eyes, she felt a spark, something foreign yet familiar at the same time. It wasn't the blind devotion she had once had with Daniel. No, this was something else entirely. It was intrigue. It was power. It was a chance at redemption. Evelyn smirked slightly, tilting her head as she studied him. "That's quite the statement," she mused, taking a sip of her drink. "Are you always this forward?" Liam's gaze remained locked on hers, unbothered by her guarded demeanor. "Only when I see something worth my time." She let out a soft chuckle, shaking her head. "You don't even know me." "That's the point," Liam countered, stepping closer. His voice dropped just enough to send a shiver down her spine. "I'd like to." Evelyn could feel the weight of his words, the intensity behind them. He wasn't the kind of man who chased blindly. No, he was calculated. He pursued only what he found truly valuable. And for some reason he had set his sights on her. But she had been burned before. She knew better than to let herself fall too quickly. "Liam Sinclair," she said, swirling her drink in her glass. "The billionaire investor with a reputation for turning nothing into empires. Ruthless in business. Unrelenting in negotiations. They say you never lose." Liam's smirk deepened. "They say a lot of things. And what do you say?" He leaned in slightly, his voice smooth as silk. "I say I know what I want. And right now, I want to know why someone as captivating as you is here alone, looking like she's carrying the weight of the world." Evelyn's breath hitched for just a moment. He saw too much. But that was dangerous. She wasn't here for romance. She wasn't here for another mistake. She was here to rebuild, to find a way to stand tall again. And yet, Liam Sinclair was offering her something she hadn't expected. A chance to rewrite her story. Evelyn had spent the last few months turning herself into the woman she was always meant to be. No longer the heartbroken girl who had been blindsided by betrayal. No longer the woman who let others dictate her worth. She had built her empire, invested in herself, and walked away from the wreckage of her past more powerful than ever. And beside her through it all was Liam Sinclair. Powerful. Ruthless. Unapologetic. A man who had become both her greatest ally and the only person who saw her for who she truly was. Liam had been the one to find her in the darkness. But he didn't offer to save her. No, he did something far better. He reminded her that she could save herself. And now it was time to show the world exactly who Evelyn Carter had become. The day of the wedding arrived with crisp blue skies and the scent of roses thick in the air. The venue was extravagant, an opulent ballroom filled with crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, and hundreds of guests dressed in their finest attire. But when she walked in, the entire room went silent. Evelyn stepped through the grand entrance like a vision in red. Her gown was nothing short of breathtaking, deep crimson, silk hugging every curve, the slit running high up her thigh making every step she took deliberate and powerful. A dress designed to be remembered. A dress that demanded attention. And the man beside her? Liam Sinclair. Dressed in an impeccably tailored black tuxedo, his presence alone was enough to send waves of whispers through the crowd. Together they didn't just enter the wedding. They owned it. Every pair of eyes in the room followed them. Some in admiration, others in barely concealed jealousy. But two faces stood out among the rest. Daniel and Celeste. And when Daniel saw her, his breath visibly caught in his throat. Exactly as she had planned. Daniel looked like he had seen a ghost. His fingers clenched at his side, his jaw tightening. Celeste, on the other hand, was struggling to hold on to her perfect smile, her eyes darting between Evelyn and Liam with poorly masked panic. Evelyn could almost hear her sister's thoughts. She wasn't supposed to come. She wasn't supposed to look like that. She wasn't supposed to be standing beside him. Liam leaned down slightly, his lips brushing against her ear as he whispered, "You've officially won the room." Evelyn smirked. "Oh, I haven't even started yet." With effortless confidence, she led Liam toward the elegantly arranged seating, her every movement calculated. As they passed guests, she acknowledged them with slight nods and an air of regal indifference, like she was the real star of this event. And truthfully, she was. It didn't take long before Daniel finally snapped out of his stupor and approached. "Evelyn," he said, his voice strained, his expression unreadable. I didn't expect to see you here." She tilted her head slightly, feigning amusement. "Strange, considering you invited me." Daniel's eyes flicked to Liam, a subtle frown forming. "I didn't realize you were bringing a date." Liam smirked, his hand settling protectively on Evelyn's waist. "That's fiancé to you, Carter." The color drained from Daniel's face. Celeste, who had slithered up beside him, forced a laugh. "Oh wow, Evie. I didn't know you moved on so quickly." Evelyn turned her full attention to her sister, her expression one of sheer confidence. "I learned from the best, Celeste." Celeste stiffened. Daniel looked like he wanted to say something, but before he could, Liam stepped in. "You know," Liam mused, his voice casual but dripping with underlying dominance, "it's fascinating how life works. One moment you think you have everything, and the next you realize you lost the best thing that ever happened to you." Daniel's gaze snapped to Evelyn. Regret. Pain. But it didn't matter anymore. Because she wasn't his to lose. She never would be again. When it came time for the wedding toast, Evelyn knew she couldn't just sit back and let the moment pass. Raising her champagne glass, she stood, her voice clear and poised. "To Daniel and Celeste," she said, the room falling silent as all eyes turned to her. "A perfect match, truly. One built on deception, betrayal, and sheer desperation." A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd. Daniel's face turned red, Celeste's nails dug into his arm. But Evelyn wasn't finished. "Some people settle for stolen love, mistaking it for happiness," she continued, her gaze piercing through them. "But real love is earned. And I, for one, couldn't be happier that I no longer have to settle for anything less than what I truly deserve." The room erupted in gasps, and Liam clinked his glass against hers with a proud smirk. Celeste looked like she wanted to scream. Daniel, he looked utterly destroyed. Evelyn smiled. "Checkmate." As the night came to an end, Evelyn didn't wait for closure. She didn't wait for Daniel to beg or for Celeste to hurl insults. She had nothing left to say. She had already won. With Liam's hand securely in hers, she turned away from the past without a second glance. As they stepped outside into the crisp night air, Liam squeezed her hand. "You did it." Evelyn exhaled, a slow smile spreading across her lips. No, she said softly. We did it. Liam grinned, pulling her close. You're incredible, you know that? She met his gaze, something unspoken passing between them. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. And as Liam leaned down to kiss her, she knew this was the beginning of something far greater. Not revenge. Not pain. But love. Real, undeniable, earned love. And she would never settle for less again. Evelyn had walked out of that wedding victorious, her head held high, her hand in Liam's, and her past left behind in a trail of shattered egos. But the battle wasn't over. No, this was just the beginning. She had played her part perfectly, stunning the crowd, shaking the very foundation of Daniel and Celeste's new life, and reclaiming her power in a way no one had expected. But power wasn't just about making an entrance. It was about what came next. And Evelyn Carter was just getting started. The city skyline glowed in the early morning light as Evelyn stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of Liam's penthouse, a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. She had barely slept. Not because she was dwelling on last night. No, she had won that battle. But there was something else. Something deeper stirring inside her. Liam, shirtless and effortlessly confident, leaned against the doorway watching her. You're thinking too much. Evelyn smirked, glancing at him. You always assume you know what I'm thinking? Liam pushed off the doorway and walked toward her, stopping just inches away. No, he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I just know you. That was dangerous. As he did. And it terrified her. Evelyn exhaled, taking a sip of her coffee before placing it on the table. Last night wasn't enough, she admitted, her voice steady. Showing up, making a statement. It felt good, but I want more. Liam's lips curved into a slow smirk. More. Evelyn turned to him, eyes blazing with determination. I don't just want to prove them wrong, Liam. I want to build something unshakable. I want to walk into every room and own it, not because I have a point to make, but because I am the point. Liam studied her, then let out a low chuckle. Now that, he said, stepping closer, is the woman I've been waiting to see. Evelyn's heart pounded as he tilted her chin up slightly, his gaze locking onto hers. So what's the plan, boss? She smiled. Because she had a plan. And it was going to change everything. 4 years, Evelyn had been Daniel's shadow, supporting his ambitions, his dreams, his company. She had been the woman behind the man, never realizing that she should have been leading all along. Now she was ready to step into her own power. And she had the perfect opportunity. Daniel's company, Carter Enterprises, was struggling. She had seen the reports, the whispers of bad investments, the cracks in his foundation. He thought he had won by replacing her with Celeste. But Evelyn was about to show him how wrong he was. That afternoon she walked into one of the most exclusive investment meetings in the city, her presence demanding attention the second she entered the room. She wasn't just Evelyn Carter anymore. She was the Evelyn Carter. Liam, always her shadow in these moments, watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips as she took her seat at the head of the table. Ms. Carter, one of the senior investors, greeted her, an air of surprise in his voice. To what do we owe the pleasure? Evelyn placed her portfolio on the table and folded her hands. I'm here to discuss an acquisition. Murmurs rippled through the room. The investor raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware you were in the market for one. Evelyn smiled. I wasn't. She leaned forward slightly, her voice poised but lethal. But I've recently come to realize that I don't just want to succeed, I want to dominate. And what better place to start than with Carter Enterprises? The room fell silent. Daniel's company. The company she had helped build but was never given the credit for. The company that was now struggling. The investor shifted uncomfortably. Miss Carter, are you saying you want to buy it out? Evelyn confirmed, her voice unwavering. I have the capital, the influence, and most importantly, the strategy to turn it around. I don't just want a stake. I want control. A stunned silence followed. Then Liam, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke. She's the smartest investment you'll ever make, he said smoothly, his voice carrying the kind of weight that made people listen. And trust me, I know a good investment when I see one. The investors exchanged glances, whispers breaking out. This was unprecedented. This was ruthless. This was genius. And Evelyn Carter had just changed the game. It wasn't long before the news spread like wildfire. Evelyn Carter was making a move to take over Carter Enterprises. And Daniel? He was furious. The first call came that evening, his number flashing across her screen. She didn't pick up. The second call came minutes later. Ignored. By the third she answered, only because she was feeling generous. Evelyn, what the hell do you think you're doing? Daniel's voice was sharp with barely contained rage. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, sipping her wine. Business, Daniel. Something you should have been smarter about. You're trying to take my company. She smirked. Correction. Our company. You just forgot that I was ever part of it. His silence was telling. You're doing this out of revenge, he accused. Evelyn chuckled. Oh, Daniel, she mused. If this were just about revenge, I would have done something far worse. More silence. Then softer, more desperate. Evelyn, we don't have to do this. She tilted her head. That's where you're wrong. She hung up. And just like that she had made her point. This wasn't personal. This was power. Days turned into weeks and Evelyn's takeover moved forward with precise execution. Investors backed her. Stocks shifted in her favor. The media couldn't get enough of the woman who came back stronger than ever. Daniel and Celeste? They were crumbling. The facade of their perfect marriage was already showing cracks, and now with their empire slipping away, the tension was impossible to ignore. And Evelyn? She was thriving. One evening as she stood on the balcony of her new office, Liam joined her, handing her a glass of whiskey. To your empire, he said, clinking his glass against hers. Evelyn smirked, taking a sip. To our empire. Liam chuckled. I like the sound of that. She turned to face him, studying him for a long moment. You never asked why I did this, she mused. Liam arched an eyebrow. I didn't have to. Evelyn exhaled, looking out at the city below. It wasn't just about them. It was about me. About proving to myself that I don't just survive, I win. Liam leaned in, brushing his lips against hers. You're not just winning, Evelyn. You're ruling. And she was. Because Evelyn Carter was no longer just the woman scorned. She was the woman everyone feared. And she wasn't stopping here. This was only the beginning. Evelyn Carter had reclaimed her throne, but the war wasn't over. Daniel had underestimated her. Celeste had betrayed her. And now they were watching as everything they built crumbled in her hands. The once mighty Carter Enterprises was slipping through Daniel's fingers, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Evelyn wasn't just winning, she was erasing him. But power was a dangerous thing. And Evelyn was about to learn that when a king starts to fall, he doesn't go down without a fight. The boardroom was silent. Evelyn sat at the head of the long glass conference table, her posture regal, her expression unreadable. Liam stood behind her, his presence a silent reminder of the power she now wielded. Across from her sat Daniel, his jaw clenched, his fingers gripping the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. Celeste sat beside him, but for the first time she looked uncertain. The smugness she always carried was gone, replaced by something else. Fear. Evelyn had stripped them of their confidence, their illusions, and soon their company. Let's make this simple, Evelyn said, her voice smooth, controlled. Carter Enterprises is drowning. You don't have the capital, the strategy, or the leadership to save it. The only way out is to sell. She paused, letting the moment stretch, then delivered the final blow, to me. Daniel's nostrils flared. This company is mine, Evelyn. Evelyn leaned back, a smirk playing on her lips. Not for much longer. Celeste cleared her throat, her voice unusually soft. Evie, we don't have to do this. We're still family. Evelyn's expression hardened instantly. You lost the right to call me that the moment you betrayed me, Celeste. Celeste swallowed, glancing at Daniel, but he didn't speak. As they both knew. This wasn't just a business deal. This was justice. Daniel exhaled sharply. I built this company. Evelyn's eyes darkened. No, we built this company. The only difference is that I was smart enough to evolve, while you were stupid enough to think you could replace me with her. Celeste flinched. Liam chuckled softly, shaking his head. You should really learn to treat your assets better, Carter. Otherwise, they tend to find better offers. Daniel's gaze flickered between Evelyn and Liam, rage simmering beneath the surface. This is about him, isn't it? He spat. Evelyn tilted her head. Oh Daniel. This stopped being about you a long time ago. Liam stepped forward then, his hands in his pockets, exuding effortless confidence. The papers are in front of you, he said casually. Sign them and you walk away with dignity. Daniel's jaw clenched. He was losing, and he knew it. But then something in his eyes shifted. And Evelyn realized he wasn't done fighting. The meeting ended with no deal. Daniel refused to sign. He stormed out, Celeste trailing behind him, her expression unreadable. Evelyn had expected resistance, but what she didn't expect was how far Daniel was willing to go to take her down. It started small, subtle attacks, leaked rumors to the press, false accusations about her leadership, whispered lies to key investors. He was trying to destroy her reputation before she could finish taking his company. But Evelyn Carter wasn't just any woman. She had anticipated his desperation. And she was ready for war. Liam watched as Evelyn worked relentlessly, dismantling every move Daniel made with surgical precision. She held emergency investor meetings, reassured board members, and turned every false rumor into a marketing opportunity. And then she went for the kill. With Liam's resources, she found Daniel's weak spot, his financials. For years he had covered up bad business deals, funneled money into risky investments, and used the company as his personal bank account. And now she had the proof. At an exclusive industry gala, Evelyn and Liam made their final move. Dressed in a stunning black gown that screamed power, Evelyn approached the CEO of a major investment firm, one of Daniel's last remaining allies. She handed him the file. The man skimmed the pages, his face darkening with every second. And just like that, Daniel lost everything. The next morning, Carter Enterprises board announced a forced removal of Daniel Carter as CEO. And within hours, Evelyn Carter was announced as his replacement. The new CEO. The rightful leader. And Daniel? He was nothing. Daniel's downfall wasn't just a business loss. It was personal. Evelyn found him in his office, packing the remnants of his career into a single box. He turned when she entered, his expression unreadable. She stepped inside, her heels clicking against the marble floors. I warned you. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. You really hate me, don't you? Evelyn folded her arms. No, Daniel. I don't hate you. You're just irrelevant now. Daniel's eyes flashed with something, anger, regret, maybe even desperation. You think this makes you better than me? Evelyn smirked. Oh, I don't think I know. She turned to leave, but before she stepped out, she paused. Oh, and Daniel? She glanced over her shoulder. Enjoy your new life in obscurity. With that, she walked away, leaving him in the ruins of his own making. Celeste had stood by Daniel, believing that together they were invincible. But when Daniel fell, so did she. With no wealth, no power, and no protection, she was left with nothing. And when she tried to reach out to Evelyn, tried to apologize, Evelyn simply laughed. Celeste had made her choice. And Evelyn had made hers. There was no sisterhood left to save. There was only the woman who had won. And the woman who had lost everything. Evelyn stood in her new office, the view of the city stretching out before her. She had done it. Not just survived. Not just won. She had conquered. Liam entered, handing her a glass of champagne. To your empire, he said, raising his glass. Evelyn clinked her glass against his, her lips curving into a victorious smirk. To our empire. Liam pulled her close, his lips brushing against hers. So what's next, Queen? Evelyn chuckled, running her fingers through his hair. Now. She looked out at the city, at the world that was finally hers. Now we rule. And as she kissed him, she knew this was only the beginning. Because Evelyn Carter wasn't just a woman scorned. She was a legend in the making. Evelyn Carter had won. Not just in business. Not just in reputation. She had obliterated Daniel Carter. His company, gone. His power, stripped. His influence, a distant memory. And Evelyn, she was untouchable. But true victory wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about moving beyond them. About building something greater than revenge, greater than the past. And Evelyn was about to do just that. Because she wasn't just closing a chapter. She was stepping into a brand new story. One where love wasn't a weakness. One where power was hers to command. And this time, she wasn't alone. She had Liam Sinclair. And soon, he would have his last name too. The fall of Daniel Carter was swift and brutal. After Evelyn's takeover, his name had been dragged through the mud. His financial corruption had been exposed. His board members had turned on him. And the press? They devoured him. Articles headlined, "The man who lost everything, Daniel Carter's business empire collapses. Betrayal, scandal, and the rise of Evelyn Carter. How the former CEO of Carter Enterprises became a nobody." Daniel tried to fight back. He tried to find investors to rebuild, to prove he was still a force to be reckoned with. But doors slammed in his face. No one wanted to back a failure. No one wanted to be associated with a man whose fiancée had left him and then destroyed him in front of the world. As months passed, Daniel faded into obscurity. Celeste, once so smug and confident, abandoned him when the money dried up. She had never loved him, only what he could give her. And when he had nothing left to give, she left. Just like he had once left Evelyn. Daniel was left alone. Broke. Forgotten. A fitting end for a man who had thrown away the best thing he ever had. While Daniel Carter was drowning in regret, Evelyn was stepping into a new future. One filled with power. One filled with love. The announcement of Evelyn and Liam's engagement broke the internet. Business mogul Liam Sinclair and CEO Evelyn Carter. Two titans coming together as one. It was a power move. It was a love story. And when the wedding day arrived, it was nothing short of legendary. The venue? A private estate overlooking the ocean, surrounded by towering cliffs and lush gardens. The dress? A custom-made masterpiece, elegant, bold, and undeniably Evelyn. A gown that hugged her curves, with a long train that swept across the marble floors like she was born to be a queen. And Liam? He looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered. As to him, she was. As she walked down the aisle, every guest in attendance felt the weight of her journey. This wasn't just a wedding. This was a statement. A declaration that she had won not just in revenge but in life. When Evelyn reached Liam at the altar, he took her hands, his grip firm, reassuring. He leaned in slightly, smirking. "You ready for forever, Mrs. Sinclair?" Evelyn smirked back. "I was born for this." The officiant spoke, but Evelyn barely heard the words. All she could focus on was Liam, the man who had walked into her life when she was at her lowest and hadn't tried to fix her. Instead, he had reminded her that she had never been broken in the first place. He had stood beside her not as her savior but as her equal. And when the moment finally came, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Liam pulled her in and kissed her like he owned the world. As together, they did. As the wedding reception continued under the stars, Evelyn stood on the balcony, looking out over the ocean. Liam joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking?" Evelyn exhaled slowly, a satisfied smirk playing on her lips. "That it's finally over." Liam pressed a kiss to her temple. "No, baby." He turned her to face him, his hands resting on her hips. "This is just the beginning." Evelyn smiled. Because he was right. Daniel was the past. Celeste was nothing more than a bitter memory. And her future? It was filled with power, love, with everything she had ever deserved. Because Evelyn Carter, now Evelyn Sinclair, had never been just a woman scorned. She had been forged in betrayal. And now, she was unstoppable.